All right, how's this going? Guys, I'm very happy to be here. I want to announce that we're basically your little cousin that you didn't know existed. But here we are. We're coming to your house and saying, you know, it's really nice to meet you, and we're crazy not to think about ways that we can work together. So I'm going to talk about some ways that I think are fairly obvious that we can consider synergies. But you know, probably more than anything, we're just a good group of people to work with. So you know, keep that in mind as we go through here. We're doing some very synergistic stuff in the tech area, but I think maybe more importantly, it comes from having growing up in kind of in the same family, is that we're raised on similar values. So I think that's extremely important, especially with a project like Ethereum Classic, where it's built on values, right? So are we. And let's talk about some of those. So let's give this a shot. Okay, so not everyone's heard about Horizen because we only became Horizen about a month ago. We did a rebrand. We were Zencash previously. So I love our tagline. I just had to throw it up here. Our goal is to bring privacy to life. So I think there's a lot of synergistic stuff that we can talk about, just kind of based on that. I'll talk about just a brief overview of who we are, because I realize that maybe not everyone here knows much about our project. So you have to understand the basics to really understand how we could potentially move forward together. So again, the common values I think are critical. And I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about these and then show you where we're going, which is extremely important. And then we'll talk a little bit about the tech ingredients. And the tech ingredients, obviously critical to think about how we can combine them synergistically. And then let's think collaboration. I'll end it with a challenge. It's also a challenge really to my team, where I want them to think in a certain direction, and I would love to go in this direction together. Okay, so why do we exist? Really, the basic thing is we think that the world is getting a little bit out of whack and forgetting some very basic things, like privacy being a human right established by the UN, not established by the UN, but iterated by or made mention of by the UN in 1948. And the world, the way that we've progressed, has sort of forgotten that. Especially, it's not uniformly understood in all parts of the world, but we think it's something that's fundamental to being a human being. It shouldn't really matter what part of the world you're from. So based on this whole right to privacy, we can derive a whole bunch of other stuff, like freedom of expression, freedom of association, rights to kind of democratically, voice your opinion in different domains that affect your life, right? So there's a lot of very important values that we're using technology to try to bring to life. Okay, so this is extending on what we consider the cypherpunk dream, right? Using technology to induce social change. That's what we're doing, and it's cool that we get to do this, and we're very lucky to be alive in a time like this where we have not just the resources, but we're standing on the shoulders of giants like Satoshi and Charles Hoskinson over here, right? So we have the opportunity to really make a difference in the world. So we're excited to be in the space, and we're moving forward on some important dimensions that I want to relate to you guys. So I want you to walk away from this to think we would be crazy not to work together, at least on something. Right, let's just pick out something and think about how we can make it work. Okay, so we have to think, why are we here, right? Every organization has to think, what's our purpose to exist? And the way that I like to look at this, at being a mathematician, is let's draw some sort of n-dimensional system and think about where we kind of plop in there. What are the factors that we kind of plop in? So if you look at this in 5 dimensions, right? We're a Bitcoin-based code base, right? We heard about that earlier, and maybe the world doesn't need all sorts of code bases, 1,000 different code bases. But what I think the world does need, though, is 1,000 different points of experimentation at every single moment in time, right? So that's what we're bringing to the table, is we're experimenting in different dimensions. One of them, which I think is really important, actually, and we're picking up, actually, from Charles and IOHK, is on the governance side. We know that governance has some potential issues when we think about how are we going to freely associate with all these people that we don't know all over the world and come to decisions on mutual resource allocation or software upgrades. Okay, so we're working in this dimension. So we're starting with a treasury model, sort of like where Dash came from, and we're doing some really nice game theoretic R&D implementation from IOHK, or with IOHK here, taking some of their research and implementing it. So extremely excited there. And again, you can see some threads as I'm going through here. We have common family members, guys. We took libsnark, which is the zero-knowledge cryptographic library from Zcash, and we're building this into a whole bunch of different products. So maybe we're not the zero-knowledge cryptographic experts, but we're actually getting expertise on how to implement it in different user environments, which are extremely important. So we're building and improving on the Bitcoin code base. We have some innovations on 51% attack mitigation, which really happy to say is running extremely well on our testnet right now. And we hope to propagate this to the rest of the industry. And I would love to see Bitcoin adopt this stuff, where we know that there's this looming threat for all proof-of-work-based coins of 51% attacks, right? Why, after 10 years, are we tolerating this type of threat? Well, we're hoping to do away with it, and right now it looks like we have a solution on the engineering side. We're innovating with IOHK again, common point of reference here, on the block DAG side, so trying to make our main chain ridiculously fast and just a ton of transaction throughput going through the main chain. And then also I have a picture of Ethereum here, the logo for Ethereum. I didn't put Classic because I don't view us as competitors. I hope that we end up being collaborators, but we are extending out into the platform space with smart contracting, and then I'll let you know my challenge at the end of this. It's in the smart contracting domain and trying to mix these technologies in a really productive way. Okay, so where are we now? We actually, for being a relatively new project, a little fact is that we have the largest node network in the industry right now. So we have over 20,000 nodes that are registered on our network, and the reason we have so many is because we actually pay people to do things, right? That's kind of a basic Econ 101, is if you want people to do things, you have to align the incentives to make sure that it happens. Well, we have kind of a master node sort of staking system, and we wanted to build out very rapidly our node network because we have big plans to actually use these nodes. We're not just trying to lock up supply and kind of keep that off market. We're actually looking to do some very interesting technical and social things with our node architecture. So we're pushing what we think is the tech frontier and implementation on scaling on-chain, and then we have a sidechain scaling solution as well, and also on transaction throughput through a very innovative DAG technology. We have a world-class team. So in terms of the ability to execute on things, I think that we're way up there. We have 50+ professionals on our team organized into 7 divisions. So we're structured very professionally, and you can see just in our deliverables. Every 2 weeks we do a community update, which is sort of like a quarterly board review. And you can see every 2 weeks it looks like we're doing a quarter's worth of activities. I'm really proud of these guys. And we have just a whole suite of products that are working right now, and we're about to release some significantly improved products. So for us, it's core technology is really important, but really the eye on the prize for us is how is this technology going to be useful to people around the world, and that's why we're focusing on products. And then, of course, we have leading partners, advisors, and you'll see when I get to that chart, you'll see who some of these guys are, but there's huge overlap, guys. So we need to think about how we can kick this up to the next level in synergies. So, all right, so our ecosystem, it's sort of like a modified open source and professional blockchain ecosystem. But the important takeaway here is incentive compatibility, is the most important thing. If you want to get people all over the world with different skill sets to come and participate and do things that add value to your ecosystem, I think you need to think really hard about the incentives. Why are they here, and how are they going to continue participating in a productive way? We do that, and here's the architecture that we have. I don't want to belabor our project too much, so we'll go through it pretty quickly, but we're sort of a hybrid system that uses a kind of masternode-like system. We call them secure and super nodes. Secure nodes because we layered TLS into the protocol, so we can have point-to-point encryption in addition to zero-knowledge transaction encryption. We're also building this on-chain treasury voting system that's actually based on the Ethereum Classic proposal that IOHK submitted. Very excited for it, actually. It's game theoretic, and we're modifying it to work on our chain. Very excited to be able to decentralize and make our project not reliant so much on specific team members to be able to be making these resource allocation decisions. We want to democratize, and we're doing this in a liquid democracy context, which is extremely exciting. So, and we're focusing really hard on the next generation technology for us, which is on the sidechain. side. We're looking to get into more of a platform system. Now, our economics are a little different than Bitcoin, than Dash and other projects, is we have a treasury system, which means that every block that's mined, a little bit of Zen goes into our treasury fund, and then we decide how to use this to pay our team, to do R&D projects, to do marketing, video productions, you name it, anything you can think of to actually productively grow your ecosystem, we get this with our treasury. It's sustainable, it's incremental funding, we didn't have to go out and do a big ICO, which has economic problems, potentially, with information asymmetries, moral hazards, and so forth. With us, it's every single block, a little bit of Zen goes into a treasury, and if the market likes what we're doing, they'll reward us by increasing the price of Zen and therefore increasing our budget. If they don't like us, and it seems, I can't tell right now, does the market hate us, or is the market just going down? Sometimes it's hard to tease out the idiosyncratic versus the systematic volatility, right? I think it's because the market's going down, but I think this is really important. So for us, it's a point of sustainability to make sure that we know we have funding going 100 years into the future. So we're going to be around. We're not going anywhere, and we're on a very long-term growth path here. We're not trying to hype anything, and this is why we've remained kind of low-key for a while now. We're just really getting out to market and expanding significantly in different areas. But we hope to be here in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, right? So this is a long-term thing for us. And what's our vision? So coming back to why are we here? So this is the vision that we put forth is we want to enable individuals to own their digital footprint and then to monetize it or do whatever they want with it or not have a digital footprint. It's completely up to them. But really, my big utopian vision here is I would love to see a de facto universal basic income everywhere in the world that applies to every single human being that's based on technology and not politics. This is the long-term vision, and this is what we're trying to do by building out an app ecosystem and using zero-knowledge cryptography to protect user data, and then ultimately plug this into decentralized marketplaces for that data in a way that's safe, secure, and anonymous for individuals so that they're not compromised, but they can also benefit from their own digital footprint. Okay, so there's two tech ingredients that are really important for where we could potentially work together. One, we're a big user of zero-knowledge cryptography, right? So maybe we're not the cryptographers, again, that are going out there and innovating right now on the tech, but we're innovating in how it's used, and we're building products that incorporate it, which is equally as important as to even creating the technology in the first place, because, guys, the technology is amazing. I love it as a scientist myself, but really, how is this technology going to make people's lives better? And that's what we're focusing on as a project. So in the zero-knowledge domain, I think there's probably some work that we could do together. Ethereum has, you guys know since 2016, has been exploring with Zcash different ways to integrate zero-knowledge, and they have some software bundles that incorporate it. There's probably some work that we can do here on the product side as well. Okay. And then we're doing sidechains. So for us, we're building out a platform mechanism, but we're not doing this with, say, smart contracts on-chain. So we're trying to do this in a sort of scalable, containerized method where we have sidechains that can do a whole bunch of different things that are generalizable. And the model that we're going to actually be announcing next week with a new technical white paper will show you that it's a generalizable sidechain system where the main chain does not have to know anything about any sidechain that's built on it, which is really nice because it's modular. It has at its core software development kit and an SDK, where as long as a sidechain, any developer in the world can create a sidechain that is interoperable with our main chain just by plugging in our SDK, and this will be the point of interaction. So the future that I see here is I want to migrate entire business models onto their own sidechains. Maybe not their own sidechain. Maybe we'll have a real estate sidechain. Maybe we'll have a healthcare sidechain. Maybe we'll have a sidechain for a large enterprise that wants its own independent one. Maybe we'll have a Golang sidechain, a Scala sidechain. Maybe we'll have a nice C++ sidechain. So the point here is that it's generalizable and therefore extremely scalable, which is important, and I would love to experiment with moving forward, potentially with Ethereum Classic as well. So here's the challenge. The challenge that I give my team, first and foremost, and then if you guys are up for joining us on this challenge, is we want to build a sidechain with smart contracting and embedded zero-knowledge cryptography. Okay, so this is quite a challenge. This is like our version of a Manhattan Project, and we're really excited for it. So we're kicking this off with our own sidechain SDK that you'll see published next week, at least the technical specs. And then we're going to be developing a prototype of our first sidechain. Our first sidechain will actually be our treasury voting system, which will be used as the cornerstone of governance for our ecosystem so that we can truly decentralize and make our system censorship resistant. But what I want to do is, if you guys have any interest here, Ethereum Classic developers, in pioneering some of this stuff with us, working with us, maybe we do some R&D together, maybe we do a demo together. Please, let's talk afterwards. I'll put you in touch with our CTO, our chief architect, and we'll actually get working on a tractable project to make it happen. So we're all about being tractable and actually getting things done. So we pride ourselves on operational ability to execute. So let's put together a simple plan. Start small and then try to work from there. So we'd have to think through the type of R&D that we could do together, make sure the economic incentives are aligned properly, obviously. Now, let's leverage some of the existing relationships we have here that you can see today. Charles with IOHK, we have the DCG family here that we're also very proud to be part of. And our community values are, I guarantee you, check it out, extremely aligned. Right? Our values from where we start and where we want to go. Our culture is extremely important to us, and there's way too much synergy here to ignore. So that's what I have, guys. Please, if you're interested at all, check us out. So there's a ton of classic ways here these communities have to engage each other. Check out ours, or just come talk to me afterwards. Let's get something going. But I'm happy to answer any questions right now.
All right. Any questions?
Or was that boring?
Sure.
Hi, I was just wondering if you could say something about this alternative chain selection rule or this 51% attack mitigation that you've been developing.
Right, yeah. So the way 51% attacks happen is that you have a malicious miner that can then mine a sequence of blocks in private and then do some activity like deposit funds on an exchange, like typically happens in a 51% attack. And then they're mining in private a whole sequence of blocks that includes transactions that invalidate a deposit they made to an exchange. Then what they do is they try to inject all of these blocks at once into the main chain, kind of invalidating their initial deposit into the exchange, and it's basically an exchange heist. What we did, which is fairly natural, is you impose a penalty metric based on the distance of blocks that you're submitting, the distance from the block height currently. So it's essentially a very simple penalty mechanism that's very effective, actually. So you try to inject, so in our case, we had a 51% attack a few months ago. And what happened was a malicious miner basically injected 36 fraudulent blocks into the chain and made away with a little bit of money from one of our exchange partners. Not a little bit, it's relative, right? But this is something that we just should not have to deal with as an industry now. It's 10 years into Bitcoin, let's fix it. And that was a thought. So this penalty mechanism, we have a white paper out with the actual detail. You can look at our algorithm. We analyzed a variety of algorithms, converged on the one that actually we initially put forth in the white paper, but just real simple penalty system.
Just a quick follow-up. Will it also mitigate against things like selfish mining or stubborn mining?
I don't know. I'm a very selfish person, so, but yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
All right, back over there.
Thanks, Rob. So I think you guys have come up with a really innovative incentive structure to enhance network participation and perpetuate the network effect. And so I'm just curious, what are the types of, how much growth have you seen in the number of nodes that have come online since launching the upgrade back in July?
Okay, so we had something like 12 or 13,000 nodes before we did this upgrade recently, where we adjusted the block payouts. And now we have over 20,000 nodes, so from 13 to 20,000 or so is fairly significant percentage-wise. So it started to level off, as you would expect. The way we do it is we have 10% of the block rewards go to like our tier 1 node class, our secure nodes, and 10% of the block reward goes to the tier 2 class, our super nodes. And they have different staking requirements. The super nodes have a 500 Zen staking requirement. The tier 1 has 42 Zen from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. We're kind of dorks. But when we did the adjustment up to 10% on each of these, we kept it fixed. So it's sort of an economics experiment where we're seeing where we converge to some sort of dynamic equilibrium. I expect it to change. So it's interesting thinking about this from an economics perspective. What's the required rate of return to a node operator? What types of risks are they hedging? What types of liquidity concerns do they consider in valuation? Right now, I think we're converging on a sort of equilibrium. But as the market changes, I guarantee there's a sort of macro or systemic risk contribution to the required rate of return. I suspect that will change over time, and I hope to see more. The big vision is we want to see a node in every household. So we think big, and maybe we're crazy, but we're trying to make these things with as light of a footprint as possible, and ultimately get them out to every single human being.
Thanks.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Rob.
Cool. Thanks.